parents received $2,000 a month from me so they could live comfortably, but on my wedding day, they didn't show up at all. When I called, Mom snapped, "Don't bother us." I hung up shaking and immediately closed every account in my name. 30 minutes later, they called me frantically. I started sending the money 4 years ago, the week my father got laid off. He had worked at the same manufacturing plant for 22 years. Floor supervisor, the kind of job that becomes an identity. When they eliminated his department, he came home, sat in his recliner, and more or less never got back up. I was 3 years into my nursing career. Hospital shifts, 12 hours at a stretch, living in a one-bedroom apartment with a secondhand couch and a coffee maker I'd owned since college. My take-home was decent, but not $2,000 a month comfortable. My mother called on a Sunday evening, her voice thin in the specific way that meant she had been rehearsing it. She said they couldn't make the mortgage. She said my father was devastated. She said she didn't know what they were going to do. I set up the automatic transfer that same night. They said it was temporary. 6 months, maybe a year, until my father found something new. I told myself that too. A year passed, then 2, then 4. He applied for 2 jobs that I know of. One he turned down because the commute was too long. The other was beneath him. Mostly he watched television and attended my sister's life events as though that were an occupation. I found out what was actually happening with the money by accident. I needed to update my direct deposit and had to log into the joint account we'd opened for the transfers. I hadn't looked at the transaction history in over a year. I trusted them. The withdrawals were right there. $400 to my sister's landlord, $800 to the financing company for her car, a $340 charge at a spa resort 3 hours away, billed to my mother, a furniture purchase, a weekend hotel stay in a city neither of them had mentioned visiting. The mortgage payments were in there too, but they accounted for less than a third of what I had been sending. The rest had been quietly redirected to my sister's life and my mother's comfort. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. Then I started screenshotting every transaction I could find. I didn't call them. I didn't text. I documented everything, closed the app, and went to work the next morning like nothing had changed. My wedding was planned for a Saturday in October, a barn venue 40 minutes outside the city, 70 guests, a live band, a dinner I had spent 3 months organizing down to the centerpieces. My partner and I had been together for 6 years. He was steady and the kind of person who remembered small things, which sounds minor until you've spent years surrounded by people who forget the large ones. I mailed my parents a save the date in April. 6 months notice. 3 weeks passed with no response. Then my mother texted that my sister needed them that weekend. I pulled up my sister's Instagram that same afternoon. Brunch photos, a mall trip, nothing resembling a crisis. I didn't change the date. I told myself they'd come around, that by October something would shift. People don't skip their child's wedding. That's not something that actually happens. The morning of, I woke up in the bridal suite at the venue. My closest friend was there. My partner's mother had driven 2 hours with a casserole and a card that made me cry before I'd done my hair. My phone had messages from colleagues, from friends I hadn't spoken to in months, from a cousin who had booked a flight just to be there. Nothing from my parents. The ceremony was at 2. 70 people in wooden chairs facing barn doors thrown open to the October afternoon. My partner was already crying before I reached him. I wasn't. I was present in the way you are when you've decided to protect something and you're not going to let anything touch it. It was over by 3. I stepped outside while guests moved toward the reception. I stood in the gravel parking lot in my dress and called my mother. 4 rings. She answered with background noise behind her. Voices, music, the warmth of a party going well. Before I could say a word, she said 3 words. "Don't bother us." The line went dead. I opened my banking app, removed myself from the joint account, canceled the secondary transfer to my father's personal account. $200 a month I had quietly added 2 years in for his gas and groceries. Confirmed. The whole thing took 4 minutes. I walked back through the barn doors, found my husband at the bar, and shook my head when he started to ask. "Tonight," I told him. "I'll tell you tonight." He handed me a glass of champagne and we walked to the floor. 31 minutes later, my father called 17 times in a row. I know because I checked the screen when I came back from the restroom during dinner. 17 missed calls, a string of texts beneath them, each shorter and louder than the last. I read the first 2. Then I set the phone face down on the table, picked up my fork, and finished my meal.